Sonic boom, fighter jets, DC airspace. What's really going on? How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the sonic boom heard all over the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, better known as DMV, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. Now, a lot of you guys who live out there heard it, and the question was, what's going on? Are we under attack? Is it World War III? What's happening? Well, what you heard was fighter jets taking off after a plane that violated DC airspace. Now, the plane did crash eventually, but that wasn't the boom. The boom you heard was the jets breaking the sound barrier. They had to get permission to break the sound barrier to chase this plane. Now, here's what happened. We're going to get into a video in a minute, but here is just a basic idea of what happened. So the plane took off from the Bristol area of Tennessee, which is right there on the northeast part of the state, right on the border of Tennessee and Virginia. It took off from Bristol, and then it went up like through 81, that particular corridor, and crossed over in between Richmond and DC, over 95. Then it went over the eastern shore of Maryland, and it went out on the water to come back around and land. Now, typically what happens is autopilot will be engaged and it will make that kind of loop so it can land right there in New York. So it should have landed right there, you see, right there at the top of the loop. But I guess the person who was flying the plane may have had a medical emergency. I'm not sure what happened, but the landing never initiated. So it appears like the autopilot just went in a straight line trying to go back to Bristol, because that'll be the way right there. But the problem is it went right over Washington, D.C. You cannot do that. That is very, very, very sensitive area for obvious reasons. You got Congress, president, all that right there in D.C. So, of course, now you got a bunch of fighter jets that are chasing it. And they realized that the person may have had some kind of medical emergency, and they kind of just escorted it until it crashed. It wasn't no point in shooting it down because it was going to crash anyway. They couldn't get in there to land it because it's a little prop plane. It's a Cessna. You can't board it from another plane midair. All they could do was just escort it until it crashed. And then it wound up crashing right in the Blue Ridge Mountains, not too far from where it took off. Now, before I go any further, there is a video I have here of the actual sonic boom and whatnot. You know, you had guys that were doing concerts and a little bit of everything else on YouTube, Ring cameras, all of that was going off. And if you want to see this video in full without my commentary, link as always will be in the description box. If you're on IG, visit the link in the bio, go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Happened to hear it? A loud boom disrupted our gorgeous Sunday. Fox News has since learned that it was a sonic boom from a military aircraft that took off from Joint Base Andrews.
Fox 5's David Kaplan has been all over this since the loud boom happened around 3 this afternoon. He joins us live from Joint Base Andrews now. The unknowns of this situation are just startling for everyone. Tell us, David, what have you learned so far?
Well, Jacqueline and Sierra, good evening to you. Fox 5 has learned that the impetus, the beginning of this incident, was a small private aircraft that was flying erratically in the area that was not responding to radio calls.
Now, before we continue with the actual story, I just want to say rest in peace to all those who passed away. I'm not sure who was on the aircraft, but I saw a Facebook post and somebody said that their whole family's gone. So rest in peace to all those who died and prayers out to the families. Let's continue.
Fighter jets were scrambled from Joint Base Andrews, and in the process of that, they were cleared to go to supersonic speeds. When they did that, that boom, according to officials, is what many of you heard across our area. In a statement, NORAD says that the pilot of the small plane was not responsive when they scrambled and caught up with that plane over Virginia before it crashed. We'll talk more about that in a second, but as for what all this sounded and felt like, here's a sampling of videos shared with Fox 5.
Now, when you hear that kind of sound, what do? It's not gunshots, not at all. A car crash, like what is that sound? And then my question is there a vibration, earthquake type thing going on? What's really happening?
Yo, what?
Fox 5's newsroom got calls from all over our area, from Annapolis to Springfield, Virginia, and plenty of places in between, saying they heard the boom. As for this Cessna plane, we are told it crashed in Southwest Virginia near Stanton. Virginia State Police is saying they've been unable to locate the plane as of now due to cloudy conditions in that area. Here's a Fairfax County man describing what he heard and felt.
Shout out to the reporter for saying Stanton right, because normally people that are not from Virginia would say Staunton or something. That's the way it's spelled, Staunton, but it's called Stanton. I got family out there in that particular neck of the woods. I am from Virginia, so shout out to him. He must be from Virginia or know people that are right there. I think he might be. I'm not sure if this is. I think this might be DC area news. If they're out there by Stanton, like Charlottesville, something like that, it'd make sense. But I digress.
I mean, we're just watching TV, trying to be quiet, and then, loud bang. The whole house shook, kind of like vibrated a little bit afterwards, and we both jumped up off the couch. And I mean, it was honestly, I thought maybe like somebody was trying to kick the door in, or like a car ran into the side of the house. So like, we got up, ran around, started checking everything, and.
So a little bit more from NORAD here. They said that the jets were scrambled from here, eventually caught up with this Cessna, this small plane. They fired flares to try and get the pilot's attention. That was unsuccessful. Sounds like they eventually had a visual inside the plane and saw that the pilot was unconscious, and eventually that plane crashed in the George Washington National Forest in Western Virginia at about 3:20. Guys.
Wow, David, well, the reactions you got from everyone just showed the magnitude of this situation. You've been digging for answers about the loud boom ever since it happened. With the research you've done so far, what can you tell us about the plane?
Well, Sierra, we know that plane took off from Tennessee. According to publicly available records, it was heading for Long Island, New York. Indications are it almost got there, but then mysteriously took a U-turn and started flying back in the direction of Tennessee. That is when it was encountered in this area. It is unclear exactly what exactly happened on that plane. That is the subject of ongoing investigations by federal authorities. If we learn anything about that, we'll be sure to pass that along to you. We'll have the
So that's a video right there. Again, I will link to this in the description. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. I mean, what do you do when you hear a sonic boom and you also feel it in your home, and you're probably not used to a thing like that? I'm used to jet noise. Like if I go back to Virginia, you go back Oceana, whatever, you might hear jet noise at that particular neck of the woods. But a sonic boom, something like that, I can kind of startle you. But again, that was not the crash. You're not going to hear a sonic boom from a crash. The sonic boom was from the jets in the air, and they're not necessarily going to really fly super high. As far as I know, like they could fly real low. A lot of them jets fly like right on top of your head. But anyway, I digress. The point is that the boom was not from the crash. It was from the jets going very fast, breaking the sound barrier. And I don't know what happened. I would presume, like I said, that the plane was on autopilot all the way to Long Island. But autopilot only helps you go from point A to point B. Takeoff and landing is a different story. Okay, now the pilot, the operator must be in control of that process. Okay, get yourself up in the air and get yourself down. But as far as cruising, flying, it's like cruise control in your car. Put that on and you could just put your hands up behind your head for the most part. That's kind of what it is. And I think the autopilot got the person to Long Island, but they couldn't land it because they were already unconscious. I think they lost consciousness between Tennessee and Long Island. Then there was a U-turn, and it went in a straight line right back to where it came. That's probably what went on here. But as I close, I want to say this. Shout out to the federal government. Shout out to our defense. Obviously, we're ready for something like this to be going on. I think if this was a real threat, like some kind of terrorist type situation, the plane would have got shot down. Unlike the spy balloon, but that's a different story. And again, I digress. If it was a real threat, a real terrorist type situation, the plane would have got shot down, regardless of where it was. It had got vaporized. But because they were able to see inside of the cabin of the airplane and, observe the person knocked out, it's like, what more can you do? Can they rescue the plane? I don't think so. You can't just hop in the plane midair and try to steer it in the proper direction. It's unfortunate that they died, but that's what happened. That's why there was a big sonic boom out there in the DC metro area. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? Do you live in the DC area? Did you hear and or feel the sonic boom? What were your thoughts when you heard it and felt it? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. It's really unfortunate that it's happened. I just think, goodness, that it wasn't worse than what it was. It's good that they crashed out in the mountains in rural Virginia rather than crashing right there in DC and harming a lot of people, crashing on an apartment building. Speaking of planes and jets crashing, back many years ago, or a few years ago when I was in Virginia, I remember they were doing a bunch of exercises out there by the base, I think out Oceana in Virginia Beach, and one of the jets crashed into an apartment building, crashed and burned. I think the pilot ejected and survived, if I'm not mistaken, but the jet crashed into an apartment building. Now, by the grace of God, nobody was injured in the apartment building. I think it was middle of the day, people were at work or they just weren't there. Matter of fact, it might have been the senior community. I can't really remember. All that I do remember is that I don't think anybody died, by the grace of God. A full apartment building right there, urban city area. It could have been all bad, as it could have been right here. But again, thankfully, it wasn't bad. But prayers out to those who lost their lives on the actual plane. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.